Hello, my name is Thomas Pasquale, and today I'm going to speak to you guys about cystic fibrosis. So I'll start with a brief history and general description of the condition. So it was first noted in 1595. It was described in a European journal as a patient with very salty saliva. It was also, until recently, known to be a fatal disease and typically taking the lives of children. Until recently, when new therapeutic methods were developed, uh, there was just no treatments, and these patients died, unfortunately. This is also more common in Caucasian individuals. It occurs in almost 1 in every 3,000 births. The rates in Asians and African Americans is much less, about half as likely to occur in those groups. Next, the physical symptoms associated with CF and the severity of those can vary dramatically depending on the gene or the effects on the gene associated with cystic fibrosis. Next, let's just go over some symptoms and complications. The most common symptom and most likely thing most people think of when they hear cystic fibrosis is the production of a thick and sticky mucus. This mucus affects various organ systems, including the respiratory, digestive, and reproductive system. Some highlights of some complications that the sticky mucus can cause is bronchiectasis, nutritional deficiencies, intestinal obstructions, and infertility in both men and women. This occurs because the thick and sticky mucus will tend to clog up pores, airways, the digestive tract, and some of the tubing in the reproductive system, causing these listed complications. It also can cause a lot of inflammation, which you can see right over here, which further impedes these passageways from flowing. The molecular cause for cystic fibrosis is known as the cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator, or the CTFR gene. It's located on the long arm of chromosome 7 at position 31.2. There's over 1,000 possible mutations that can cause this condition. This ties in again with that the different severity in different individuals, depending on the amount of mutations or the specific mutation. The condition can be be mild to very severe. The most common mutation is at the delta F508 position, and involves the deletion of a codon responsible for phenylalanine. Next, this condition is passed in an autosomal recessive inheritance pattern. This is a quick little model for anyone still needing a brief description of what that means. So to have cystic fibrosis, you need to have 2 mutated genes in order to produce this. So carriers can sometimes have some symptoms, but they're typically very mild. And many people go unnoticed being carriers for some time. This mutation, as I mentioned, it affects the reproductive system. Most males are completely infertile. There's other methods that they can use nowadays to reproduce, but they're limited. And females can reproduce, but they can have some complications with pregnancy associated with the excess mucus. Next, this is a quick little model pedigree of an autosomal recessive individual. So as you can see on this side, there was 2 carriers, and based off of this Punnett square, their children, there was 2 that were unaffected and 1 carrier, and in this family is the same combination, and unfortunately the 2 carriers ended up having an offspring that was affected with cystic fibrosis. Next, let's just go over the normal functions of the proteins, the CTFR proteins. They are actually protein channels responsible for the flow of chloride ions. This is a quick little picture. So it affects both the ions flowing into and out of the cell. These are little chloride ions, little blue balls. These channel proteins are typically found on cells that produce sweat, mucus, digestive enzymes, tears, and saliva. And next, what happens when you get the mutation with cystic fibrosis? It affects the structure of the the protein in different ways depending on the mutation. This impedes the flow of ions, resulting in the production of exceptionally sticky mucus. Again, we have a quick little diagram here showing how the mucus also forms a layer over the channel, which also further impedes the flow of ions. Okay, next, let's just go over treatment options that are currently available for cystic fibrosis. There's currently no cure for cystic fibrosis. Most treatment plans work on managing the patient's symptoms and keeping them out of the hospital. So the main goals during these treatments are to prevent and control infections in the lungs, to remove and loosen mucus in the lungs, treat and prevent intestinal blockages, and monitoring patients' nutritional intake. So some simple lifestyle changes that many people need to make with this condition that can help better their symptoms are to monitor their nutrition and fluid intake and consume foods that are lower in salt and chlorides so they can help with their condition. Next is just quit smoking. It can cause further damage to the lungs and cause more infections. Exercising is also very good for helping the lungs and the heart and just keeping everything pumping and a healthy lung. Getting immunizations is also very important to reduce your chance of getting other conditions that can further exacerbate your symptoms. Staying healthy is a big part of cystic fibrosis, unfortunately, with many of these autosomal recessive conditions. Also, going to the doctor frequently or as needed for the different severities is very important, so they can keep monitoring your condition and your symptoms and making sure you're staying healthy and where you need to be. Next is just some genetic testing. Just conclude with this. Most genetic testing nowadays involves just screening parents for the condition. There is some prenatal testing available, which would normally only be carried out if the carrier screenings come back as a possible match. There are some concerns with this kind of prenatal testing because there is no cure for this condition. So the options, if the tests do come back positive, are very limited. Unfortunately, one of the benefits is that it gives parents with these children, apologies, I had some computer issues, but the benefit of having this prenatal screening is it gives parents the opportunity to educate themselves more and prepare themselves to have children with cystic fibrosis. The only alternative to that is to terminate the pregnancy, unfortunately, as there is no cure, even with earlier treatment options. Okay, and then just to conclude, just a list of my references. Thank you guys so much for listening to my presentation. It's been a great class, and I've really learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else has too. Best of luck with your future endeavors. Thank you.